Texas keeps selling you the dream. Low taxes, booming economy, people flooding in from California and New York with high hopes. But right now, while the state counts its new residents, entire towns across Texas are running on fumes. City budgets drowning in red ink. Water systems one breakdown away from failure. Retirees who moved here for affordable living now facing tax hikes that wipe out their fixed incomes. This is 10 Texas towns quietly going broke. A border city that lost half its tax base when factories left for Asia. An oil town that bet everything on crude prices and lost. A suburb outside Dallas where roads crumble faster than the city can patch them. And a master-planned community that's supposed to be a Texas success story, except nobody mentioned the part where they can't pay their bills. Hit subscribe because you won't hear about these places on the evening news. Let's count them down. Number 10. Brady. Brady sits in the geographic center of Texas in McCulloch County. Population around 5,000. The problem is, Brady's water system is ancient and failing. The city faced a $12 million bill to upgrade the wastewater treatment plant to meet state standards. For a town of 5,000 with median income under $40,000, that's an existential crisis. Voters rejected bond measures twice. Nobody wants higher taxes, but the wastewater plant still has to meet EPA compliance, or the city faces state intervention. The council started looking at merging services with nearby communities because they've simply run out of options. State regulators have issued notices to Brady about the condition of its water infrastructure, which is the kind of thing that shows up in official documents and then gets ignored until it becomes a headline. Older residents on fixed incomes are caught between not wanting higher taxes and not wanting to lose running water. The surrounding ranching economy hasn't grown fast enough to generate new tax revenue that could close the gap. Brady applied for federal infrastructure grants but faces stiff competition from hundreds of similarly struggling small towns across the country. Without outside funding, the math simply doesn't work. Number 9. Kennedy. Kennedy sits in Karnes County, about an hour southeast of San Antonio. Population 3,300. During the Eagle Ford shale boom around 2011, this quiet ranching town turned into ground zero for drilling operations. Workers flooded in, hotels got built, restaurants opened. The city started spending like the boom would never end. Then oil prices collapsed in 2015. Crude dropped from over $100 a barrel to the mid-40s. Workers left as fast as they'd arrived. Sales tax revenue dropped over 40% in less than 2 years. By 2018, Kennedy was running six-figure deficits and burning through reserves just to keep the lights on. The boom came, the boom left, and Kennedy got stuck with the bill. The hotels that got built during the boom sit half-empty most weeks now. Local officials have been trying to attract agricultural processing businesses to diversify the economy, but progress has been painfully slow. Several small businesses that opened to serve the oil field workers permanently closed when the workers left. The school district, which had seen enrollment bump up during the boom, watched those numbers fall back down, along with the state funding tied to them. Kennedy is a cautionary tale about what happens when a small town mistakes a temporary boom for a permanent economic shift. Number 8. Eagle Pass. Eagle Pass sits on the Rio Grande in Maverick County, population 29,000. For decades, it served as the logistics hub for maquiladora factories across the border in Mexico. Then companies moved operations to Asia. The retail sector that relied on Mexican shoppers crossing to buy goods in Texas collapsed when the peso devalued. Those shoppers stopped coming. Sales tax revenue fell sharply. Hiring freezes went into effect. Median household income is $35,000. Nearly a quarter of the population lives below the poverty line. The city provides services to 29,000 people, on a budget that keeps shrinking. Commercial truck traffic through Eagle Pass has increased significantly in recent years, but the tax revenue generated from that activity doesn't come close to replacing what the city lost from retail and cross-border commerce. The roads that handle all that truck traffic take a beating and require constant, expensive repairs. Local officials have pushed the state for more infrastructure support given the volume of trade that crosses through Eagle Pass, with limited results. Several community programs for elderly residents had to cut hours or shut down entirely due to budget constraints. The The people most dependent on city services are the same people the city can least afford to help right now. Number 7. Port Arthur. Port Arthur sits on the Gulf Coast in Jefferson County. Population 54,000, down from over 66,000 in 1980. Hurricane Harvey hit in 2017 and dumped over 60 inches of rain. Entire neighborhoods went underwater. 3 years later, more than 2,000 homes were still vacant and damaged. Property values collapsed and the tax base got gutted. The refineries survived fine and still operate, but they're highly automated now, employing a fraction of former workers. Median household income is under $35,000. More than 30% live in poverty. Revenue keeps dropping faster than the city can cut expenses. Flood insurance costs in Port Arthur have become nearly unaffordable for average homeowners, which discourages people from rebuilding and accelerates the population decline. Several neighborhoods that flooded during Harvey have never fully recovered, leaving blocks of abandoned homes that generate no tax revenue and pull down surrounding property values. The city applied for FEMA mitigation grants to buy out the most flood-prone properties, but the process has moved slowly. Port Arthur's downtown, which once had a functioning retail corridor, now has more empty storefronts than occupied ones. The city is caught in a cycle where population loss reduces revenue, reduced revenue means fewer services, and fewer services push more people to leave. Number 6. Balch Springs. Balch Springs is a Dallas County suburb. Population 25,000. The roads are crumbling. Street resurfacing projects are 20 years overdue in some areas. The general fund ran deficits multiple years straight. In 2019, the shortfall hit $1.3 million, forcing the city to drain reserve funds meant for actual emergencies. Nearly 60% of residents rent, so the property tax base is weak. Residents shop in nearby cities, so sales tax dollars go elsewhere. Voters rejected a bond measure for road repairs. Median income is around $45,000. The roads keep deteriorating, and the city keeps kicking the problem down the road. The city has struggled to attract new commercial development that could strengthen the sales tax base, partly because the deteriorating infrastructure makes it a less attractive location for businesses. Neighboring cities with stronger tax bases can offer incentives that Balch Springs simply cannot match. Code enforcement has become a growing issue as properties that owners can't afford to maintain start pulling down neighborhood values. Several city positions in public works have remained vacant for over 2 years because the budget won't support filling them. When your public works department is understaffed, the infrastructure problems you already can't afford get worse faster. Number 5. Huntsville. Huntsville sits in Walker County, 70 miles north of Houston. Population 45,000. Home to Sam Houston State University and multiple state prison units. You'd think that combination would mean stable finances. It doesn't. The city faced a $4 million shortfall in 2020 and furloughed employees. The core problem is that both the university and prison facilities are state-owned and generate zero property tax revenue, yet the city still has to maintain roads, water, sewer, and emergency services for those populations. Students use city services and leave when they graduate. Huntsville is stuck between inadequate revenue and expenses it cannot cut. The prison population also creates unique demands on local emergency services that the state does not fully reimburse the city for. Huntsville has lobbied the Texas legislature for payments in lieu of taxes to compensate for the massive state-owned footprint within city limits, but those efforts have produced little. Local businesses that depend on university traffic face their own seasonal volatility, which makes sales tax revenue unpredictable month to month. The city deferred major road projects for years to manage cash flow, and now some streets are in genuinely dangerous condition. Huntsville is a case where the institutions that define the town are simultaneously the reason the town can't pay its bills. Number 4. Edinburg. Edinburg is in the Rio Grande Valley in Hidalgo County. Population around 100,000. In 2017, the former mayor and several officials were indicted on federal corruption charges involving bribery and fraud related to city contracts. But the crisis runs deeper than corruption. Median household income is around $38,000. More than a third live below the poverty line. Roads flood during heavy rains because drainage systems are inadequate. The city runs deficits and relies on one-time revenue sources like grants to balance the books. That approach has a hard limit, and Edinburg is getting close to it. The corruption cases damage the city's relationship with state and federal agencies that administer grants, making it harder to access the outside funding Edinburg depends on. New city leadership has been working to rebuild credibility, but that takes years, not months. The university brings some economic activity, but most students leave the valley after graduation, so the long-term economic multiplier is weaker than officials had hoped. Colonia communities on the city's edges lack basic water and sewer connections, representing both a humanitarian problem and an infrastructure liability the city doesn't have money to address. Edinburg has real potential given its location and university presence, but the financial hole it's in makes it very difficult to capitalize on any of it. Number 3. Jefferson. Jefferson is in Marion County in East Texas, population 1,800, a historic former river port that now runs entirely on tourism. Antebellum homes, bed and breakfasts, ghost tours. For a while it worked. Then the 2008 recession hit, and discretionary travel dried up. Bed and breakfasts went empty. Restaurants and shops closed. Sales tax revenue collapsed. The median age is over 50. Most residents are retired on fixed incomes. When the city raised property taxes to cover shortfalls, it landed hardest on the people least able to absorb it. Jefferson bet everything on tourism. The bet stopped paying, and there was no backup plan. Several of Jefferson's most prominent historic properties have fallen into disrepair because owners lack the resources to maintain them, which undermines the very appeal that was supposed to attract visitors. The city has explored partnerships with preservation nonprofits to stabilize key buildings, but funding has been difficult to secure. Younger residents have largely left for larger cities with more economic opportunity, leaving an aging population with limited ability to generate new tax revenue. The city's water and sewer infrastructure is aging and needs significant investment that isn't currently in any realistic budget projection. Jefferson is a genuinely beautiful town with real history behind it, but beauty and history don't pay municipal bond debt. Number 2. The Woodlands. Yes, that Woodlands. The master plan community north of Houston. Population over 114,000. Corporate headquarters, upscale shopping, top-rated schools. One of the places people point to when they talk about Texas done right. In 2021, residents got hit with a significant property tax increase that caught nearly everyone off guard. The Woodlands had been deferring infrastructure costs for years, assuming continued growth would cover the bills. Growth slowed. The deferred maintenance came due all at once, and the township had no choice but to raise taxes sharply. Residents were furious. Many are retirees who moved there specifically expecting low, predictable taxes. The Woodlands isn't facing bankruptcy, but when one of the wealthiest communities in Texas can't maintain services without a major tax increase, it tells you the problem is bigger than any one struggling small town. Storm drainage infrastructure throughout the Woodlands requires expensive upgrades that weren't fully budgeted for during the years when tax rates were being kept artificially low. The township's reserve funds had been drawn down over time to cover operating gaps, leaving less cushion for genuine emergencies. Some residents who bought homes specifically because of the Woodlands' reputation for fiscal discipline felt genuinely misled when the true infrastructure backlog became public. The situation highlights how even well-managed, affluent communities can quietly accumulate financial problems when the incentive to keep taxes low overrides the need to fund long-term maintenance. It's a lesson that applies to towns of every size and income level across the state. Number 1. Pecos. Pecos sits in Reeves County in far west Texas. Population 13,000. During the Permian Basin boom, oil revenue flooded city coffers. The city hired staff, upgraded facilities, approved projects, and took on debt to finance infrastructure. Everything was going to be paid back by the revenue that would keep coming. Then oil prices crashed in 2015 and again in 2020. Drilling stopped. Workers left. Tax revenue vanished almost overnight. The budget flipped from surplus to deficit in under 2 years. With debt payments still due and revenue gone, Pecos faced the real possibility of defaulting on its bonds, which would have destroyed its credit rating and shut off any future borrowing. The city avoided default by cutting everything it could and raising property taxes on residents already stretched thin. Median income is $42,000. Nearly a quarter live in poverty. There's no new industry waiting to replace oil. The town built its entire financial future on one volatile commodity, and when that commodity turned on them, there was nothing underneath to catch the fall. Some residents who took jobs with the city during the boom and bought homes expecting stability found themselves laid off and stuck with mortgages in a market where property values had dropped. The city's credit rating was downgraded, making any future borrowing more expensive at exactly the moment when Pecos can least afford higher interest costs. Local schools saw enrollment drop as families followed the oil field jobs to other parts of the Permian Basin. Pecos has discussed attracting solar and wind energy projects given the region's abundant land and sunshine, but converting that potential into actual tax revenue has been slow. The oil is still out there in the ground, but the economics of pulling it out change with every swing in global crude prices, and Pecos has no control over any of it. So there you have it. 10 Texas towns in serious financial trouble, and most people have no idea it's happening. Some made bad decisions. Some got blindsided by things outside their control. All of them are facing a future harder than the past they remember. If you're thinking about retiring to a small Texas town because taxes are low and living is cheap, look at the city budget first. Ask how old the infrastructure is. Ask what happens if the main revenue source disappears. Ask if maintenance has been deferred for years. The towns on this list didn't go broke overnight. They went broke slowly. One skipped repair and one bad budget at a time. And by the time anyone noticed, fixing it required real pain. If you made it to the end, subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in the next one.